On a summer evening, Dr. Rachel Brooks walked leisurely through the deserted hallways of Samuel Harrison Medical Center. A day with several complicated surgeries, tons of paperwork, and now the night shift. Rachel could already feel the fatigue taking over her exhausted body, but her sense of professionalism wouldn't give her a break. The woman silently made her way to the dark room in the farthest wing of the clinic, where the mysterious patient had been admitted a few days ago. He was brought in critical condition with multiple wounds and extensive areas of necrotic tissue. But strangely, the doctors were never able to determine the cause of his condition. Rachel intended to examine the man in person once more, hoping that a thorough examination would help shed light on the mystery of his mysterious illness. As she approached the room, Rachel stood still for a moment. She thought she heard a rustle in the silence of the hallway, but peering into the darkness, she saw nothing. Nothing unusual. She entered the room and turned on the dim light. In the middle of the room, a young man lay chained to the bed, his face hidden by bandages. "Hi, Jason," Rachel said quietly as she stepped closer. "This is Dr. Brooks. I came to see how you were feeling." There was no response. The patient lay motionless, barely breathing. Rachel gently felt his pulse, checked the sensors on the instruments. The readings were stable, but she still felt a vague unease. Lowering her gaze to the bandages, the woman suddenly noticed that they were slightly raised, as if someone was moving underneath them. Rachel froze, her heart racing. Something wasn't right here. Slowly, trying not to move, she reached for the lamp to turn on a brighter light. But no sooner had she done so than the bandages were thrown aside as if by a gust of wind. Rachel jerked back in amazement, unable to believe her eyes. Jason's horrible, disfigured face stared back at her from the darkness. His skin was covered with bloody sores and boils, as if he'd been eaten from the inside out by parasites. Spinning his eyes wildly, he let out an inhuman, hoarse howl. Rachel froze in place with horror. She tried to call for help, but her voice stuck in her throat. Suddenly, Jason jerked with inhuman strength, breaking the chains that bound him to the bed. The metal creaked pitifully. Rachel panicked, and the doors to the room slammed shut with a clatter. Trapped, she pounded desperately on the door, begging for help. But it was silent outside, as if the entire medical center had died out. Rachel was gripped by the horrible realization that she was alone with this monster. Suddenly, Jason let out a hoarse laugh. The woman watched in a daze as she watched him slowly, as if reluctant. He began to rise from the bed, pulling on the chains with a loud clang. His disfigured face contorted in a ghastly grin, as if he was taking pleasure in her fear. Rachel leaned against the wall, trying to find some kind of weapon, but there was nothing in the room. Jason, meanwhile, was already standing on the floor, struggling to move his feet. Rachel could see that his limbs were mangled, bones seeming to protrude from the rotting flesh. She squeezed her eyes shut, begging to be saved, but all she heard in response was the monster's heavy breathing. Suddenly, some noise was heard in the hallway. Rachel opened her eyes for a moment, hoping for help. But at that moment, Jason came at her with inhuman speed, knocking her to the floor. The woman struggled helplessly, trying to free herself, but his mutilated hands clutched her throat. She watched in horror as his crazed eyes literally burned her with their gaze. In desperation, Rachel struggled as hard as she could, but her body was gradually weakening from lack of oxygen. She was about to lose consciousness when the door to the room swung open, letting in a bright light. "Dr. Brooks!" came a concerned voice. Suddenly, Jason's grip loosened, and he collapsed to the floor. Rachel gasped as she rose, seeing Edgar, the young nurse, standing in the doorway. "Thank God you're alive," he exclaimed, walking quickly over to her. I heard the noise and came running. Rachel struggled to catch her breath as she stared at Jason's still, mutilated body. She still couldn't believe she'd survived that fight with the mad monster. "What happened to him?" Edgar asked, watching the patient anxiously. "I don't know," Rachel whispered, still shaking from the horror of the experience.